Thank you very much for participating today. Good evening and Assalamu alaikum from Dhaka. Today we have virtual conference on the future of non-profit financial reporting, Bangladesh stakeholders. The topic is very important, especially for NPO and NGO and the profession as a whole. So first of all, I would like to request the Honorable President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Bangladesh, Mr. Mohammad Farooq, FCA, to deliver his address of welcome. Thank you.
Respected Chief Guest, Mr. Mohammad Rashidul Islam, Director General, Grade 1 of NGO Affairs Bureau. Session Chairman, Ms. Rashida K. Chowdhury, Executive Director, Campaign for Popular Education. Learned paper presenters, Mr. Azhar Ali FCA, Country Champion Bangladesh, IFR4 NPO, Assistant Country Director, and Country Financial Controller concerned worldwide. Mr. Samantha Mushok, SCA, Project Director, IFR4 NPO, Vice Presidents, Member Councils, Past Presidents, fellow members and executive of ICAB, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to you all. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to welcome you all at the virtual members conference on future of non-profit financial reporting, Bangladesh stakeholders. Indeed, this is a very relevant topic for all stakeholders who are working in national and international not-for-profit organizations, regulators, accounting bodies, donor agencies, standard setters, and professionals. I believe our members, both in service and practice, will be benefited from this conference. They are all. You know, NPOs of Bangladesh have a golden history for development work before and after liberation war. From the birth of an independent nation in 1971, Bangladesh became a site for not-profit organization. Initially, it focused on relief and rehabilitation activities following the War of Liberation and the succeeding natural calamities. Afterwards, international local NPOs extended their efforts to longer-term development where state couldn't reach to deliver welfare. Bangladeshi NPOs found many opportunities for partnership with the growing international community of development NPOs and government development agencies. Dear fellows, till now there is no separate international financial reporting standards for NPOs. So the international NPO community always wants to have to adopt their template and framework in case of financial reporting. As a result, NPOs in Bangladesh prepare their financial report as per donor requirement where IFRS is absent. Some NPOs follow cash basis financial reporting and some follows non-cash basis as well as accrual basis. There remains inconsistency in the financial reporting of NPOs. The paper presenter has correctly mentioned that as of today, there is no international financial reporting standards for NPOs, which is resulting in consistent financial reports don't meet donors' need, high cost For funders and grantees, lack of transparencies, double funding fraud. Dear fellows, ICAB, being the regulator of accountancy profession in Bangladesh, has been performing the assigned responsibilities on it over the years. Dissemination of guidance and update in respect of financial reporting for non-profit organization is one of such activities. I am fully confident that the learned paper presenter will be able to explain these issues, their impact, challenges, and way forward for profession and business. Respected Chief Guest, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for your kind presence through virtual platform among us. Your presence has made the program enlightened. Dear Session Chairman, we are grateful to you for your kind consent and joining us as session chairman at today's conference. Our members and guests participants today are eagerly waiting to listen to you. Dear paper presenters, we're very happy to have you among us today. I hope you can reveal all aspects of the subject matter through your presentation and discussion. I believe that today's conference will enrich our knowledge, and with that, we shall be able to provide support to the profession and business as well. At the end, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all of you to make the conference a grand success. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for participating in this important conference. Now, I would like to request Ms. Rashida Chaudhary to moderate the remaining session of the conference. Ms. Rashida Chaudhary, over to you.
Thank you for handing it over to me. And here, I suppose our honorable chief guest is already here, Mr. Rashadul Islam, whom we call him as the guardian of NGOs or NPOs in Bangladesh, because he is the head of DG of our guardian agency, NGFS Bureau. He's here, and distinguished paper presenters, members of the Council of ICAB, Institute of Chartered Accountants, Bangladesh, members present, those who are already participating, particularly on a weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good evening to all of you. Thanks to ICAB for organizing such an important discussion session, because this is not only important for the profession of chartered accountants, for the professionals, but it's important for everybody working in this sector, not only in non-profit or not-for-profit organizations, but for everybody, all of us who believe that good governance is one of the key things for development to go ahead. I'm an education rights activist, but I believe good governance is part of ensuring right to education. And good governance, the two tools are financial accountability and transparency, which comes from this type of exercise, and which gives us the clarity to go ahead as not-for-profit organizations. An interesting topic, future of NPOs. I've been thinking, but maybe looking at the presentation, these slides that I got earlier, the PowerPoint, I was thinking this is an interesting topic to discuss, to know, particularly for NGOs in Bangladesh. I represent I am the CEO of the Association of Education NGOs. One concern is also our member, I proudly say. It's a part of our obligation to make our members aware of this type of roles and responsibilities that we have to perform while reporting our financial aspects. And here we also partner with Institute of Chartered Accountants Bangladesh, because ICAB is the agency for helping us to go ahead with transparency and accountability. But some very interesting features of the program, and renowned expert speakers are here. For the sake of saving time, let me introduce them very briefly, because it's a long story. First, I would like to introduce our non-Bangla speaking guest speaker, Samantha. And if I don't know whether I have pronounced your name, Masuka, Samantha Masuka, pronounced your name rightly. But interestingly, she qualified in the discipline of natural science, then diverted herself to this financing and accounting profession. Interestingly, she has an interesting career in the not-for-profit sector, and where everybody has been working, all international NGOs and others she has been working. This is, I don't even dare to read out her CV, it's quite interesting. And Mr. Azhar Ali, the paper presenter, who is FCO, Azhar Ali FCO, and he also has an interesting career, because they are all professionals. And again, for the sake of time, please excuse me. I'm not introducing them in an elaborated way, because they are the professionals, they are the ones who will be guiding us today. How do we deal with this not NPO sector? Helping them out, guiding them for having transparency and accountability, because it should not be compromised anywhere. Good governance is part of our commitment. As NPOs, we need to commit to this and practice this. And here we need support of professionals. And here, uh, particularly this international financial reporting for NPOs, they have come forward to share their experience and expertise. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So I would like to request Mr. Azhar Ali FCA, the main paper presenter, to start sharing the screens. I don't know whether you are going to share your screen or not. Yes, okay, thank you. And then followed by Samantha will be presenting in the later part of the program. But meanwhile, we'll be having breakout sessions. I will request Mr. Azhar Ali FCA to guide us through those breakout rooms or group discussion sessions. Thank you again for being with us. I could see almost 300 participants who have joined this program. Wonderful evening. Wonderful. Thank you for being with us, particularly on a weekend, joining this very interesting, very, I should say, one learning exercise, particularly even for me. Thank you so much. And please go ahead, Mr. Azhar Ali, with your presentation. Thanks to ICAB again.
So wow, so huge number of participants have joined this webinar from different parts of the world. Because of the timing difference, I must say good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, and assalamu alaikum to you all. I'm glad to be collaborating with IFR for NPO as country champion for Bangladesh and assistant country director with Concern Worldwide to ensure stakeholders are aware of the project and encourage you to participate. We have with us as session chairperson, Honorable Ms. Rashida K. Chaudhuri, Executive Director, Campaign for Popular Education and former advisor, Caretaker Government of Bangladesh. We are very honored that Mr. M.D. Rashidul Islam, Director General, NGO Affairs Bureau, Prime Minister's Office, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh has kindly agreed to be as the chief guest for this event. We have different range of professionals here with us today. My learned fellow colleagues, chartered accountant and practicing member of my beloved institute, ICAB. We know ICAB members have been doing a great tool for the development of society, business, NPO economy, and for the country since 1973. Non-profit organization colleagues who works literally day and night to change the life of the poor people of our country. My concerned worldwide family have been working in Bangladesh since 1972 to meet the need of extreme poverty in Bangladesh. Donor community who always provide huge support for our country. Also joined by renowned banker, professional accountant, academic, IFRS expert, and media. More importantly, we have with us relevant regulator of NPOs in Bangladesh. First of all, I'm glad to welcome and recognize the presence of different guests and participants who is here with us today. You are welcome, welcome, and welcome. This meeting is hosted with ICAB. Our target participant were 300, but Mahbooba is saying that a lot of participants is waiting outside of the room. So it shows that how excited you all are for the betterment of the NPO sector. Here, you can see some background picture to understand NPO works. As we discuss issues of financial reporting for NPOs, we'd like to keep in mind that NPO financial report have little meaning apart from the great work that NPOs do around the world and here in Bangladesh. So NPO work is not limited only in health, social services, education, research, environmental protection, development, aid, advocacy, culture, recreation, and more. We'll have 2 hours altogether, as you can see. There are 2 blocks of short presentation and discussion and feedback session in between. Although we online rather than in person, we have built in time for a small group discussion through Zoom breakout room and use of the chat function to encourage interaction, discussion, and feedback. This discussion is the heart of today's event, and your active participation would be very helpful and valuable to us. Believe me, being a Bangladeshi professional, I believe that we have courage, eager to learn new knowledge, world-class capacity to bring the positive changes and be pioneer for the betterment of NPO sector. I believe we will exceed our expectation today with all of our professional input. During the small group time, it will be important to turn your video on if you can to enable a meaningful discussion, but obviously not now. First of all, we will take 20 minutes to introduce you to the IFRP NPO project. Apologies to those who may already be familiar with it, but hopefully this will be a quick reminder and make sure we are all on the same page when it comes to the latter parts of the meeting. We will start a short video that can be found on the project website.
IFR for NPO is a 5-year initiative to develop the first ever internationally applicable financial reporting guidance for non-profit organizations. It's coordinated by Humentum and the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. You probably know that businesses have international financial reporting standards, and governments have international public sector accounting standards. But the not-for-profit sector has no equivalent. This undermines the consistency and usefulness of financial reports, and ultimately harms the sense of trust and accountability that is so central to its effectiveness. The current system is also inefficient, with duplication of effort for both NPO and funders in meeting multiple and at times conflicting financial requirements. An academic study in 2014 received responses from 179 countries. 72% of respondents agreed that an international standard for NPOs would be useful. So, the IFR for NPO project is answering this call. By engaging a wide range of stakeholders, the new guidance will command support from the accounting community and NPOs, as well as those that fund and regulate them. The guidance is being developed in a technically rigorous 3-step process, involving a consultation phase and development of an exposure draft, with final guidance available from early 2025. With the goal that at least 10 countries will use the guidance by 2030, with more to follow. The project has a technical advisory group involving national standard setters from every continent and an official observer from the International Accounting Standards Board. And the practitioner advisory group helps us ensure the guidance will meet users' needs. The founding funders share our vision for this game-changing project. We have the opportunity of a generation. We can increase accountability and transparency while reducing inefficiency in the current system.
I hope that video has given you a sense of just how important and exciting this project is. One question that often arises is, which type of financial report this project developing guidance for? We know NPO may produce different type of financial report, so it is important to be clear which report are and are not the focus for IFR for NPO project. All the transactions of an NPO should be made entered into the accounting systems which classify and summarizes those transactions to produce various financial reports. We know some reports are for internal use by managers. Sometimes we call it as management accounts. When NPOs implement donor-funded projects, they are often required to produce a special purpose report specifically for that donor about that project. And every year, the organization produces its annual audited accounts, which are also known as general purpose financial statement, all from the same accounting system. The IFR for NPO project is focusing on the general purpose financial statement and accompanying narrative reports. Of course, the different type of reports are connected because they are created from the same source transactions or the same accounting system. Human Term is also working on another project to harmonize donor project reporting format, which is a story for another day. Which stakeholders are being considered in this project? The IFR for NPO project is responding to challenge expressed by three broad groups of stakeholders. The first group of stakeholders are users or reader of financial statement. General purpose financial report aim that meets the need of a range of users. This includes donors, but also regulators, service users, also called beneficiaries, or client or members and the public, as well as bank, collaborating partners, suppliers, and the staff. Within this group of users, large donors are particularly influential, we know. If the requirement of the IFR for NPO guidance conflict with the some donor reporting requirement, that will cause problem for INPO. But donor themselves use of general purpose financial reports for due diligence and understanding the organization as a whole. For that reason, the IFR for NPO is engaging with donor in a donor reference group. The second important group of stakeholders are those who prepare the financial statement, and that is, we know, non-profit organizations. Any benefit to users need to be balanced with the cost to be preparers. For example, some information may be of interest to certain users, but difficult for preparers to measure. The third group of stakeholders is our auditors, who provide assurance about whether the financial statement presents true and fair view. They are often at the front line of supporting NPOs to implement and apply applicable accounting standard or guidance. The IFR for NPO project does not represent any particular group, but is keen to develop guidance that balance the cost and benefit to different stakeholders. So what will this project actually deliver? What changes will it bring about? If we see the current problem, many of the challenges expressed by the stakeholder stem from the core problem. That is, there is no internationally applicable standard for how NPOs prepare their annual financial statements. Where countries do not have national standard, this leads to the inconsistency even within the same jurisdictions. For larger international NPOs, inconsistencies between countries makes consolidation difficult and expensive. When funders look at the financial statement of potential grantees, they may find it hard to assess financial capability or understand the wider context for a particular project. This results in expensive and often duplicative process for due diligence, financial reporting, and auditing. The lack of clarity and consistency ultimately reduces the transparency in the sector, which makes funders nervous, especially about double funding fraud, which is harder to spot given the focus on project-based reports. The solution, what are the solution? The solution that the IFR for NPO project is providing is internationally applicable guidance for how NPOs should prepare their annual general purpose financial reports. It would be up to a particular country to decide whether to adopt or align to the guidance, and whether certain NPOs within their jurisdiction should be required to or allowed to follow it. Funder may also recognize it as best practice and encourage its use where entities are allowed to adopt it. What is the future outcome, right? The future outcomes and benefit are wide-ranging. For NPOs applying the guidance, it means they will be better able to demonstrate their capacity and attract funds, as well as supporting the provision of decision by providing useful information for governance and management. For funders, it contributes to better and more efficient due diligence, which is a win for NPOs too. And having clear guidance simplifies and improves the value of audit assurance. One of the other really important outcomes from this project, separate from the guidance itself, is the creation of a global community of stakeholders able to engage and collaborate to solve sector-wide issues. And this has never existed before. Ultimately, we believe that this guidance will contribute to a more resilient and accountable sector that is better able to attract, generate, and utilize funds to achieve positive social good. Who is behind this project? This project is being implemented by two organizations in partnership. One is Humantum and another is SIPFA. Humantum is a global association that convenes NPO professionals and inspires sector-wide changes. You may have heard the name of Mengu or Inside NGO, who marched to form Humantum in 2017. The Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy is UK-based with standard-setting rules for local government and charities, but also plays an important role as an international convener on public sector accounting issues. Both Humantum and SIPFA are themselves NPOs. Between them, the project partners are well connected to a range of stakeholders within the sector and that are critical to this project. So we can say this really is by the sector, for the sector. Seed funding to enable the project to launch has been provided by Open Society Foundations and the Ford Foundation, but the project is not fully funded. The project also has advisory groups who offer their perspective and expertise on a voluntary basis. The technical advisory group comprises national accounting standard setters from 5 continents, and the practitioner advisory group includes preparers, users, auditors, and academics specializing in non-profits. We are deliberately and proactively seeking to build and maintain diversity in this group. Information about each member and details of all the meeting can be found on the project website so that the process is fully transparent. The project is using a three-phase process equivalent to all other standard setting process. But developing the guidance itself is really the beginning. The benefit will be felt after it is widely adopted and used. We're expecting that we'll have a consultation paper by this year, and we will take input from the relevant stakeholders, and it will be started from January 2021. Similarly, we are expecting that exposure draft will be published by mid-2023. And finally, we are expecting the final guidance ready for adoptions early 2025. You know, there will be a lot of training and transition process to adopt these. This is why there are 2 key aspects of the IFR Pro NPO project design. One aspect is the technical rigor applied in the guidance development process led by SIPA. The other aspect is the stakeholder engagement led by Human Town, actively reaching out to stakeholders all over the world, regulators, national professional accountancy organizations, donors, and NPOs to participate in the development process so that they are ready and willing to adopt it when it is done. So how we are doing in terms of outreach? The project already has engagement from peoples all over the world. Countries in blue are those where individuals have signed up and registered their interest in this project. They include a broad range of stakeholders, including both international and local NPOs, their auditors, accountancy bodies, regulators, donors, and others. You see, the yellow flag shows members of the technical advisory group of national standard setters. The red flag shows the members of the practitioner of advisory group. Can you please identify where is my country, Bangladesh? Yes, and the black flag shows the various country champion like me working to engage stakeholders in their countries to ensure those voices are heard. Thank you so much. Now I am going to hand over my dear colleague Samantha to conduct the next sessions, and these sessions would be really an interactive. I'm sure you all will give your professional input so that Bangladesh will be the pioneer for the betterment of NPO sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Azahar, for that fantastic introduction and bringing us on the same page. Let me also say an apology. I believed that the meeting could host up to 1,000, but we hadn't had the chance to test it. And Bangladesh has broken the system. Our Zoom account can only take 300. And I understand there are people waiting in the waiting room. I'm personally not able to fix that right now. I am really sorry. What I can assure you is that we will be posting this video, and this is by no means the last chance to interact. This is a long project over 5 years, and we have many, many ways to interact with stakeholders in Bangladesh. So for those of you that were trying to get in and are now watching this on video, my heartfelt apologies, but we do look forward to engaging in other ways. So what we're going to do now is break into small groups of about 8, 9, 10 people. And then what you need to do is first just say hello to each other, nominate a spokesperson, and then you have about 20 minutes to share what are your reactions or your comments to what Azahar has shared. What questions come to mind? And then have a think through what are the benefits that you can see as stakeholders in Bangladesh, and what challenges can you see? And even better, if you can see challenges, are there any solutions that you can also foresee and share in your groups? So if I can, yes, Muhammad, are you able to make me the host again? I should mention that I'm from England, as you can probably tell from my accent, but I've lived in Uganda for 20 years and worked in the non-profit sector here in Uganda, which I'm sure has more similarity to Bangladesh than to London. And so that's where all my years of non-profit experience have been. So here goes with the breakout rooms. Now, if you have any problem in the breakout rooms, you can leave and come back to this meeting, or you can ask me to come to your meeting, and I will send you some notes about to remind you what to talk about, and also when your time is due to be up. So there are 17 spaces in this room, in this big room. So if some of our chief guests or presenters are in the waiting room, it would be for one of the hosts to admit them, if that's okay. So let me explain what, maybe I can explain what should have happened, and you can compare what should have happened with your experience. So what should have happened is that everybody should have been able to watch the initial presentation by Azahar and hear the initial opening words by our chief guests. And then everybody should have joined a small group of about 10 to discuss and share their ideas. And then we're coming back into the main group to share those key ideas. Now, I appreciate that has not been everybody's experience, so I do apologize for that. The problem was that the Humentum license was used for this meeting rather than the ICAB license. However, we are back in the main meeting, and it would be wonderful if there were groups that did manage to have a fruitful conversation. If there's a spokesperson who would like to raise their hand using the raise hand function, so you go to participants, and then you can see a little icon to say raise your hand, and maybe share with us some reflections or comments from your small group in reaction to the presentation. Is there anybody who, yes, Anwar Chowdhury, please come in.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for giving us chance. We have a group of, our group is a small group, and Kamal Bhai was there, Rohub Bhai was there, they can supplement to us. We had a discussion based on the points you have raised. So one of the, our group, first of all, the group come to a conclusion that we all are working in the NPO sector for the last, I think, 20, 30 years. And we have faced, especially when we are comparing to the financial statement of a larger 4, 5, or 10, 20 organization, we are facing problem for a unified accounting report or financial statement. Even during one of the program where Rohub Bhai and myself, we are engaged in a CD program where there is a 51 NGOs working with us. At that time, we had a big discussion among our leading auditors in Bangladesh. And accordingly, we come to a conclusion that at least the financial statements, the format, and the disclosure should be uniform. So in that sense, our group come to the conclusion that this guidance note, when it will be published in 2025, at least the non-profit organization will get a guidance note by which we can prepare a financial statement, which should be somehow uniform all over the country or all over the world. So these are the big benefits from this project. The bigger question, we have some bigger question. The bigger question is the ownership of this guidance note, whether IPAC will be the owner, or ISB will be the owner, or CIPF will be the owner. who will be the owner and who will subsequently control this guidance node when it will be if it will be an IFR who will be managed that the project during their consultation project, they have to make sure that the owner should be selected. Then challenge the the NGOs or non-profit organization will face in the asset recognition, because most of the donors, they have their policy during giving the fund, they have their own policy. So due to donor policy, we are facing problem in asset recognition, asset as well as even grant recognition. So in this project, we have seen that you have set aside the donor issue. Only donor will give a feedback from a consulting group. So one of our group recommendation is that how this project can align with the donor, at least with the major donor, so that there should not be any conflict, this guidance note and donors guidance note. As far as the example EU, USID, they have their very set rules. So if we will prepare or IFR for prepare any guidance note, which conflict with the USID, EU, or the NIDA or DFID, how it should be reconciled. So this project should address that area also. The other area we have, we thought that Kamal Bhai is there and Rauf Bhai can supplement about the overhead. The bigger question and transparency issue always come with the overhead, because this overhead issue is not sometimes clear to the donor, even clear to the employee or clear to the sub-grantee. So in that sense, a guidance note will actually address the overhead issue. There are some other issues that will discuss, other group will discuss, yeah.
I didn't understand your third point. It's about
the Kamal Bhai, you can Kamal Bhai, you can supplement the overhead issue.
Is the support cost, which is unattributable cost, common cost across the global headquarter office, the head office cost. Example, headquarter cost to allocate among the different donors during that time period. Each individual organization using their own basis, and that is there's no standard as yet developed. Like organizations sometimes taking their basis as a budget basis, some organization use headcount basis, multiple basis they are using. And from auditor versus the NPO, this is the issue, because when there is the same funding allocate to two different donor, two different implementing agencies, and if they are using two different bases, because there are no international setup standard basis there, and that contradicts each other. So this project can address these issues also.
But in conclusion, our group, we come to a conclusion that this is a great initiative with thanks to Humantum and CIPFA for taking this project. And this project in Bangladesh, especially in Bangladesh, one of the NGO habit we called it, it will be benefited for our professional accountants as well as for our NGOs and those we are working for the non-profit organization. So good luck for the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Azahar, would you like me to answer some of those questions first, or should we take more questions and comments? Do you think which would be better?
So I think you can take more question and then you can reply, because some of the questions might be common. So I think we can ask all of the group's team leader to raise their question first. So you can take a note. Or
can I just raise my hand like this?
Yeah.
Sorry, very primitive. If I may go next. One question that we had was whether, that the NGOs work in different areas or different sectors. Like somebody was saying, we have NGOs in Bangladesh, which are the private universities, which are very different from, say, the microcredit, sector of the NGOs, or someone, other NGOs. And his question was that, will you have different standards for each of this? And how will you measure all this in a common platform or a common standard? That was one. It was, of course, common. Another person just asked, which is, what is Humantum's and SIPFA's role in this?
In our group, in the Bangladesh context, most of the small and medium NGOs, because they do not have donor funds, they have gone into income generating activities, microcredit being a significant one. And so in a sense, they have moved away from profit, from not for profit to profit-making organizations. So when they prepared their consolidated accounts of the whole organization, it's a mix of for profit and not for profit. So that is a challenge that is for many of the small and medium NGOs in Bangladesh. Thank you.
And Mr. Enroll 103, would you like to unmute yourself? Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Shujit Dash. So actually, I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Anwar Bhai. So he had a great experience in the NGO because more than 30 years he was in NGO. I totally agree with his points. And also, I would like to add some points like if we go into the objective of the setting of the standards. So generally what we can see in the developed countries, like there are three sets of standards. One is for profit-oriented entities, another is private entities, another is the not-for-profit organizations. So in Bangladesh, as per our group discussion, the main lackings or main challenges is to common set of standards for the general purpose of accounting. So in absence of general purpose accounting, what happens? There is no level playing field for the financial reporting standards. So there is no common reporting framework. Therefore, the finance people also face sometimes problems to how to make the report. Though there is a term of reference as per donor. So donor provided there as per their perspective. Sometimes might be they don't consider the local perspective. So that's why we also need to consider the local perspective to set up the standards. And since since the absence of the accounting standards in Bangladesh, so we have to take the idea of the donor also, because the if we look the objective for setting the standards. So for the profit organization, the objective is to make the profit. For the private entities also make the profit, but for non-profit organization, the objective is to meet the objective of that program. So that's why the objective of the standard will be also be the different from other standards. So that's why if all the key stakeholders meet together to form the common standards, then it will be very acceptable to all. And also I would like to mention there is one of the point that tone at the top. What we can see that this is the management concept. So in Bangladesh also, so like we know that Bangladesh NGO Affairs Bureau. So this organization is the main controlling point for all the NGOs. So that's why there will be should be coordination between Bangladesh NGO Affairs Bureau and ICAB, because ICAB is the main controlling point for the reporting standards to maintain to establishment or enforcement of the standard procedure, accounting standards. So if the coordination between ICAB and Bangladesh NGO Affairs Bureau is established, then that accounting standard will be more implementable and more enforceable. Also another point that the challenging is the so like there are 2 or 3 projects.
It is a project to hear the comments and react, not just the question and answer. So don't worry, do share, continue to share comments. We really want to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. No, overall that's our comments from the group, and thanks for the organizer for this one event. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Please go ahead.
My question is how you are going to deal with the macroeconomical environmental risks and micro environmental economical risks in the NGO systems. Clear? Okay.
Yes, it's clear. I'd like to propose, just in the interest of time, that I speak to some of those points, and then we can move on to the second part of the presentation. But if there are other comments and questions, please do put them in the chat. Also, the very private room I had booked in the hotel has been taken by a saxophonist, so we have some background music. There's some fantastic points raised here and that I want to speak to. The first one is who will be the owner of the guidance? At the moment, we don't know the answer to that question. It's very much at the top of our mind in terms of by the time we get to 2025, we need to have a sustainability and ownership plan. Humentum and SIPFA, somebody asked about our roles. Our roles are to make the guidance, develop the guidance by getting a lot of input from different stakeholders, both national standard setters, the ISB, IPSASB, and NPOs, donors, regulators, and all stakeholders. So our goal in the project is to develop the guidance, but in the long term, it's not our vision to be the long-term owners of it. You may know that IPSASB and IASB both met a few years ago to discuss whether or not they should take this on themselves. They both agreed that it was necessary. They both agreed that it was something that was needed in the sector globally, but they both said they didn't have the mandate or the budget or the capacity to develop it themselves. So long-term hope is that it might come under IPSASB or ISB, or perhaps an equivalent third body, but that seems unlikely. We don't yet know the answers, but that is certainly a question that we'll be getting closer to the time. It's too early really yet to answer that. So it's a really important question. You asked about donors, donor policies, donor reporting formats. And what's brilliant from these different country meetings that we're having, it's coming back time and time again from country after country and stakeholder group after stakeholder group, that our accounting systems are structured in a way to meet the needs of our donors primarily. They are like our most important users of our financial reports because that's what we need to comply with to keep getting money. So in this donor reference group and in our wider engagement with donors, we are taking this message that we're hearing loud and clear from meetings like this, and it's giving us a very strong evidence base to strengthen and speed up the existing projects that are happening to harmonize donor reporting formats. So donor project reports will never be the same as our annual year-end accounts. They're for a specific project, they're for a specific period, they're against a specific budget. They're never going to be the same thing, but if they can be consistent and speak to each other, and if donors can place more reliance on our annual audited accounts because there's more consistency and reconciliation between the two, that will be a win. So we are working, we completely hear this challenge. It's something we've been knowing as Humentum, but have lacked a very strong evidence base for, apart from anecdotal and through our work with our clients. So this project and the meetings we're having is giving us a very strong case to encourage donors in that vein. So watch this space. It's a really important point. If they're not bought in, this will be very difficult. Third question was about support costs, and I'll come to that later in the next section. But one of the things that we'll be looking at in this guidance is expenditure classification. What would be an appropriate standard way for non-profits to classify their expenses? And would that include a split between direct costs and indirect costs? If not, how else might it be done? There is another project that Humentum's involved in called Money Where It Counts, and it's developed a protocol, a standard protocol for disclosing and calculating overhead costs, which a number of donors are buying into. Again, that's another level of harmonization, which is really, really critical. So thank you for mentioning that. That will certainly all be going into our advocacy with donors. Somebody mentioned about foreign exchange. So there are a number of issues that this guidance is proposing to cover. We have discussed foreign exchange and got the conclusion that it wasn't in our top list of issues. However, one of the questions in the consultation paper, which is coming up next year, is, are these the right issues? Are there issues that are central to the nonprofit sector that ought to be covered in this guidance and aren't in the current proposals? So that will be your chance to say, yes, please include foreign exchange, and then it can be included in the exposure draft if we can demonstrate enough appetite for that. We're hearing that again very frequently, and I agree. I think it's a very important issue. We had the comment about the huge diversity in the sector, both in terms of private universities, which are maybe not for profit. They haven't got investors that are taking profit out, but it's a university, it's not an NGO. We've got small non-profits who are generating their own income. There's a number of different aspects, and again, I'll come to that in the second half, but the first chapter of the consultation paper is about what do we mean by non-profits? What are the distinctive characteristics about a non-profit that makes it a non-profit and would make this guidance applicable? And again, that's open for consultation. We've put forward proposals, but we're looking for feedback. That's been a huge challenge. One question that came in actually in the chat was about what are other countries doing? So for example, in the UK, they have a UK SORP, a statement of recommended practice. So we had a meeting like this in the UK. The committee are engaged with this project, and what they have said is that the UK SORP is an interpretation of international standards. So in the UK, they do an interpretation of IFRS for SME to make it applicable for non-profits in the UK. And their take is that if there's an international standard for non-profits, the UK SORP would be taking this international standard and interpreting it for the UK if any further interpretation were needed. So there's certainly an appetite in the UK to adopt this standard, and certainly in many of all the other countries that are sitting on the technical advisory group, that's the UK, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, France, Sierra Leone, Colombia, there are many, it's all on the website, but each of those countries is participating in this project because they are interested in seeing, they can see the value in consistency and alignment, which means giving up what they've got to get something that's the same, and there's no guarantees that everybody will do that, just as the same with IFRS, but that is certainly the long term. And then the last comment before I hand back to Azahar is about engaging the Bangladesh NGO Bureau in addition to ICAB. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think to identify the groups of stakeholders that should be engaged and involved would be really, really critical. So that could include national regulators. I don't know if there's a government body in Bangladesh that governs NGOs or different types of non-profits. If there's any associations of non-profits themselves, that's really valuable. Bangladesh NGO Bureau, maybe even the tax authorities, donors in country, these are all stakeholders who need to have their voices heard, so that where there's commonality in the needs of those stakeholders, brilliant, that can be built into the way the guidance is drafted. Where there are differences, we can understand which regions, which types of stakeholders, how can we try and find common ground. There's no doubt that this is ambitious. It's definitely not an easy project, but as I think we've been hearing from people, it's long overdue and something that would really help build the professionalism in the sector and help reduce some of the inefficiency and challenges that we're having. I'm seeing a question in the chat. How will this project ensure the country-wise policy requirements which have been updated and amended by the governments of each country? So indeed, every country has to decide whether or not to adopt this guidance. So if that's the UK, Uganda, Bangladesh, Colombia, Jamaica, there's however many countries in the world, 203, specific jurisdictions that would need to make the decision for this guidance to be applicable in their country. This is exactly the same as it is for IFRS and exactly the same as it is for IPSAS. Hopefully for countries that don't have their own national guidance now, like Uganda, I know in East Africa, there's a lot of appetite to fill that gap very quickly with guidance that's internationally applicable. And we hope that that would be a low-hanging fruit for countries that don't already have their own national guidance, especially if they've participated in the development of this guidance. It would be an easy sell for them to adopt it. And that's why in the video, we said we're hoping that 10 countries will have adopted it by 2030. I hope it will be more than that, but there's no pretending that this is a quick fix overnight. Suddenly everybody will be using the same thing. We have to be realistic. This is a project that should have started 20 years ago. but we're starting it now, and with the hope that in 20 years' time, we will have a much more joined up and professional sector. I would like, if it's okay, to pause there now and go to the second half of the presentation. There is a further Q&A section, if that's okay, but there's quite a few questions that are coming up that will actually be covered in the next section, and then we could have a final Q&A then, if that's all right. So I'm going to, Azahar, is that all right with you?
Yes, that would be fine. That would be good.
Thank you, our chair. Thank you very much. So so in the second half of the presentation, what I'd really like to talk you through is the consultation process, which will be starting next year. As we've said, this is a process, this is a project where we need to have input from very many stakeholders. And the last year and a half, we've working towards this consultation process. This is why I want to share it with you. Who should participate? Who do we want to hear from? Why? What does this process look like? What's in this consultation paper that we'll be sharing, and how practically should you respond? So the who, everybody here, everybody who's been stuck in the waiting room and not able to attend, and everybody else in the sector in Bangladesh, you're welcome to participate. We're particularly keen to hear from the following groups because of their influence and importance in the sector. So regulators, these are the ones who would have the authority to say, yes, in Bangladesh, we are going to adopt this guidance in any given country. So because they have that really critical role, it would be great to have input from regulators. Auditors are another very important group because they're the front line of supporting clients in adopting any new guidance, and they have such great insight of knowing what their clients' needs are. So we're really keen to engage auditors. Funders, as has been mentioned, is so important. If they're not bought in and if they don't stand behind this, align to it, and recognize the value of it, this will be very frustrating. It could just be another thing to comply with rather than reducing the compliance burden, which is what our hope is. So we really are reaching out very proactively to funders. And then of course, NPOs. As preparers, it's got to be practical. It's got to be not so complicated that it's not achievable for a majority of nonprofits. So why? We need to hear the cultural context in Bangladesh. There's a huge amount, as we've heard, of experience, of expertise, and quite a different sector as to many other countries. There's much more microcredit, for example, in Bangladesh than most of the other countries that we've engaged with. So those kinds of things need to be reflected. It's a real opportunity to shape the future. If you don't participate and we end up with something that's not fit for purpose, that will have been a wasted opportunity. And then finally, to build credibility, if we get 1,000 contributions from 150 countries, it will make it much harder for any government or any given donor to say, oh, well, no, that's a bit minor, that's a bit peripheral. We've got a really strong evidence base for what people actually want, and we can draft on the basis of that. So this isn't a tick box exercise where we know what we think we're going to do anyway. There's a real to this, and we really want to hear people's views. So what's actually in the consultation paper? This is the process is shaped by this paper, but it's about 200 pages. So just to get a sense of what's in it. So after the executive summary and introduction, the bulk of the questions that we're looking for feedback on are in these two parts, part 1 and part 2. Then there's a lot of annexes and additional analysis in the supplementary information, more for the technocrats, I think. And a glossary, which is not redefining terms globally. It's just because the same terms are used in different ways in different countries. What do we mean in this paper when we use that term, just so that there's a clarity of understanding. So what I want to do now is just take an overview of these two main part 1 and part 2. So part 1 is all about sort of framework level issues. It's written in plain English, and it's pitched to be accessible to a broad audience of stakeholders, not just accountants. I think here we have mostly accountants, but this conversation must not and should not be limited to accountants, because the users of financial statements very often are not accountants. So we really need their voices in as well. So each chapter presents a proposed and then ends with a request for general matters for comment. This is similar to other IFRS consultations and things like that. So these questions tend to take the form. Do you agree with the proposal? If not, why not? So in that sense, it is an open question and you've got absolute freedom to share the richness of your opinion, but it's also structured. You need to have read the proposal in order to be able to respond to it. Part 2 then is about more specific accounting issues. It's written also in plain English, but it's pitched to be accessible to a broader range, to a more technical audience familiar with accounting concepts and language. Here there are actually 5 sections, 10 issues grouped into 5 sections. So for each issue, there's a description of what is the issue, what's the problem of this area, and then some alternative treatments. And then at the end of each section, there's a request for specific matters for comment. So you're asked to comment on the specific matters in the section. And these similar questions, do you agree with the way we've described this problem? Do you agree with the alternatives we've proposed? If not, why not? And then which alternative out of the ones proposed would you prefer? And we're very deliberately not saying this is we're not, putting an asterisk against our favorite one, because we don't have a favorite one. It really is what would be the right one for the stakeholders. So again, it's necessary to have read the section before you can really respond to it in a meaningful way. So I'd like us to dig a bit deeper into chapter 1, into part 1 rather. So part 1 has 5 chapters, and part 1, chapter 1 is all about which types of organizations should be considered as non-profit organizations for the purposes of the guide. So the paper is being released in the 28th of January, so I'm not going to give you everything that's in it for now. I want to kind of paint the broad brush picture. But the proposal we've taken is to give some broad characteristics. Speaking, non-profit organizations display these broad characteristics. It's all well explained in that chapter. And so then you're asked your opinion. Do you agree with the broad characteristics that have been proposed here? If not, why not? What alternative would you propose? This is a great opportunity for Bangladeshi NPOs to compare themselves against criteria. If I have some income generating activities, but I'm generally I'm a not-for-profit, is it clear from me reading this chapter whether I'm in or out? Our aim is to be as inclusive as possible, that any organization that has transactions that would be relevant can find usefulness in the guidance. That's the aim, but then we have needed to clarify that. Chapter 2 is about who the stakeholders are, the external readers of these financial statements. In a for-profit, it's investors and return on investment and all these kinds of questions. And for a non-profit, it's completely different users asking completely different things of the financial statements. So here, for example, the proposal that from our work on this in the last year, do you agree, and this is the question, do you agree that the external stakeholders require information on the MPO's achievement of objectives, economy and efficiency, compliance with restrictions and regulations, and longer term financial health? Are these the right things? Are there other things that users are really looking for, or are some of these the wrong things? What would you propose and why? Chapter 3 is about the guidance itself. It makes a few proposals. One is that it should be accrual-based guidance rather than cash-based. That has been a long and difficult decision to reach. And the whole chapter really gives our reasoning for why we've landed on that answer. But then acknowledging that this is difficult, indicate what challenges, if any, is the question, do you foresee if the guidance is accrual-based? We can see conflicts with donor reporting if that's required to be on a cash basis. We can see issues of capacity. There's a number of challenges and they're all there, and it would be great to hear your feedback on whether that is going to be the right answer. Our aim, I should say, is to meet the needs of a majority of nonprofits, even small and medium-sized ones. Large ones, fine, but they have ways of meeting their needs. But the majority of the sector that are really feeling the pain of lack of guidance is the small and medium-sized nonprofits. Tiny, tiny community-based organizations that meet under a mango tree in Uganda are likely to be outside the scope of this because they're much more likely to have very much more simple reporting requirements, stakeholder needs, and transactions. So we're trying to do something that will meet the majority, probably won't meet the needs of the very, very tiny, and there might be some aspects for large ones that are not covered, that we're trying to do, you know, the Pareto principle. 20% of the effort to cover 80% of the issues. That's the goal. Hence accrual, what do you think? Chapter 4 is, first of all, it makes the case that we must start with an international framework as our starting point. We can't start with a blank sheet of paper and write from scratch. A, because of time. B, it's not really necessary. There's many of the transactions that happen in NPOs are already covered under IFRS or existing standards. So then the question is, which of the 3 international standards, IFRS, IPSAS or IFRS for SME, which of those 3 is the best starting point? None of them is ideal. None of the 3 is the perfect starting point. So we've thought about some criteria to decide which makes one better than the other. And then we've assessed the standards against those criteria. So the question is, are these the right criteria? Do you agree with the assessment? Is there a different standard that would be better and why? And the whole of these 4 chapters are kind of taking us towards chapter 5, which is our proposal. It's a proposal that we're putting up for comment on the way we think it might be easiest to develop the guidance that we're looking for. So the proposed model is to use IFRS for SME as a starting point because it's small, because it's not updated very, very often, and it's therefore more manageable to maintain, even though it has a different conceptual framework, even though it's designed for a different sector. And the idea is to plug the gaps in IFRS for SME where the standard doesn't tell us what to do about grant income or assets that don't generate revenue or whatever it is. So that we end up with one booklet that is based on IFRS for SME, but has the gaps that need to be filled for our sector filled. That way, we don't have inconsistency for professionals training and they don't know yet which sector they're going to go in. There's a commonality and common language across the profession. I'm watching the time very carefully, Mr. Chairman, and I'm moving along as fast as I can. So part 2, we're nearly there. Part 2 is these specific accounting issues. For example, how should the financial statements be presented? Should we have columns like in the UK for restricted funds and unrestricted funds? Should we have horizontal or vertical balance sheets? There's no one right answer. What would people prefer? We can see down there income recognition and measurement. And for grants, there's huge diversity. Do I recognize the grant when I'm promised it because I've got a contract? Do I recognize it when I've got it? Do I even defer it until I've spent it like IAS 20? What's the best way? And we see every variation under the sun. So that's going to be a really difficult one to get alignment on. But so important because even something as simple as size is very often measured using income as a proxy. And when we've got so much variation, it becomes really difficult to compare and get comparability. The other thing within income would be donations in kind, services in kind. Should they be disclosed? Should they be measured? Which kinds? The other one we see there is classification expenses. And I mentioned earlier how this has got such a strong, important linkage with our donor reporting, because that's often one of the key bugbears is that the expenses are all classified in a different way sometimes. And if we don't have a very powerful accounting package, that can be very onerous or impossible for smaller nonprofits. And you can see some of the other issues here. So it gives you a flavor for the types of things that we've identified over the last year that are everyday financial reporting, accounting challenges for not-profits, but we're not given adequate guidance in the existing standards. And you can, answers aren't obvious. There's no single one right answer that is obviously the best and all the others are wrong. And that's why we have so much diversity and inconsistency. We plan to hold webinars on each of these individual topics during the consultation period to unpack them more and unpack the proposals in more details. So hopefully you're thinking, yes, I have opinions. I have strong opinions about the answers to these different kinds of questions, and I want to share my voice. So how? On the 28th of January, we'll be launching A lot more detailed information will be shared then, but the main place is via the website. The consultation period is open for part 1 until the 30th of July, part 2 by the 24th of September. And we are looking to hold regional virtual roundtables in March to May. These are likely to be, that it's not by any means confirmed yet, but this is the current planning, 4-hour meeting for about 60 invited guests across the region, giving a range of stakeholders. But everybody is invited to participate in the consultation. We tried to make it really easy. You don't have to answer everything in part 1. You can just answer one chapter that you've got strong opinions about. Same for part 2. You don't have to answer on every issue. If you've got something to say about inventory and nothing to say about branches, that's fine. Answer the bits that you have an opinion on. We're also looking for, there's 3 likely to be, again, not confirmed yet, but likely to be a sort of letter option, a word template option, and a survey monkey option to share your opinions. So we tried to make it really easy because we really want to hear voices. So my final word, my call to action, my impassioned plea is please take this opportunity and use your voice to shape the future so that it works for you. So here I'm going to hand back to Azahar. Q&A. Thank you.
So now this is the question answer session. So thank you, Samantha, for your wonderful presentations.
Thanks for such an interesting session. It's technical plus general, and that is the strength of it. And thank you for presenting it. And thanks for the question answers and other things, particularly thanks to Samantha for clarifying some of the issues that were raised in the working groups and through the chat box. So thank you again. So we are going back to our original program schedule. We are a little late, but I would really like to request our chief guest. It is a privilege to request him to speak here and address this particular gathering of more than 280 people at this point of time. And I'd really like to request him. He is the Director General of NGO Affairs Bureau, a civil bureaucrat, very successful, and worked in different ministries. And he has got a lot of experience of working with even organizations, NPOs, particularly those who are implementing government projects, may not necessarily be donor projects. So he is well conversant with these issues. And I think we call him sort of our guardian, agency chief, because NGO Affairs Bureau is the guardian agency for NGOs or NPOs in Bangladesh, particularly those who are getting foreign funding. So without further ado, you know, and everybody knows him. He has recently joined the NGO Affairs Bureau. But as I have told you before that, he served many ministries, and he served, from BCS cadre, and he served many ministries. And his experience and his expertise in dealing with NPOs at this point of time, particularly during COVID-19, when everything is placed on sort of jeopardy, and then he has been managing this particular agency with integrity, with caution, and with all the commitment that is needed from a particular agency chief. He is the Director General of our NGO Affairs Bureau, Mr. Rashad Aslam. Thank you, and could you please deliver your speech for all of us?
I will share of the conference on the future of non-profit financial reporting Bangladesh stakeholders. This is Rashida Choudhury, Chairman Canbe and former advisor of the caretaker government, Mr. Mohammad Farooq, FCA, Chairman of FCA, Vice President of ICA, Honorable keynote speakers, Mr. Azhar Ali, FCA, and Mrs. Samantha, AC, and distinguished. A rare opportunity for me to be a chief guest here. I welcome you all on behalf of India Affairs Group. At first, I thank the two presenters for their excellent presentation. But I'm not a technical person at all. One thing I think missing here, I don't know whether I am right or wrong, that is the sensitivity of fund. We know it's a non-profit making fund, but what does non-profit making fund mean? You know, any legal outer meaning is very much clear. That fund does not make any profit. That is, it cannot be an utilized source of that fund. From NGO Affairs Bureau receiving two types of funds from the organizations. When we are getting LOI from individual, that it is clear the individual is identified. But what about the organizations? If we look into the activities of that organization, we see they are mobilizing funds from various individuals. So ultimately, the individual is the ultimate donor. But we know human being is by birth selfish. If a newborn baby catches something, you cannot take it from the baby because the baby does not spare anything for others. It is the human character. So why one individual is spending money? Maybe it is not profit, but maybe it is more than that of profit. That is, if you ask individual why you are giving money, you can listen various stories from him. One can tell, in my boyhood, I was very much helpless, and it will not be possible for him to reach the present level without the help of others. So he is committed to spend 1/3 of his monthly income for the benefit of others. And other man can tell that my mother did not get proper treatment in her age, so he want to spend some money to improve the medical sector like this. And the target group is not, if he is living at New York, the target group is not only to Bangladesh. And it is clear the NGOs just telling that they need 20% of that money for administrative cost and 80% will be spent for the beneficiaries. And I am approving the fund. The funder knows very well 80% of his fund will be spent for the purpose of his expectation. You know, we have no office at the district and Upodela level. We are depending on the DCs and EONOs. We are taking completion report from them, but ultimately we are dependent on our auditors. They are audited report. The utilizing of fund is very sensitive. That is very much sensitive because it's the question of satisfying, giving money. He's spending his money to get not profit, but it is more than that of profit. So it is a challenge to utilize the donors fund, the donation fund, the grant money. So auditors should keep in mind helpful for him to know that first he must be taught the clear the nature of fund and the sensitivity of the fund. And you know, Bangladesh government is going to turn, that is, have been working to turn Bangladesh into digital Bangladesh. So process simplification and automation of the service is the demand of the day. I think the proposed guideline will help very much to make the fund more transparent and to see the transparency of that fund. I hope every success of this seminar, this workshop, and NGO Affairs Bureau is always with you. And if needed, to make the, to ensure the transparency of the utilization of donation fund. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Guest. Honorable Chief Guest has delivered his speech, and maybe because of some network issues, connectivity issues, we could not hear some of his comments or some of his advice for us. Sorry about it. But now I have been requested by the organizers to have kind of a wrap up and to close the session. So thank you everybody for being here with us. Well, it's a very good idea. What I could gather, I'm not a technical person, but as an association chief, an association of more than 200 NPOs, including BRAC, the largest NGO in the world, which is also part of our membership network, and a very small community organization, maybe working in the rural areas of Bangladesh. It's part of our network. So we are very interested in this kind of international standards for NPOs. And it is also aligned with our national integrity strategy, which was approved by our cabinet, which has also mentioned this kind of a standard setting. And our association was part of developing a guideline for NPOs or NGOs for implementation of this national integrity strategy under the guidance of the NGO Affairs Bureau last year. And this is still under process, and it will be probably, you know, implemented soon. But this international standard will go very well with that particular integrity strategy. It's a very good initiative. I agree with all the ideas and some of the suggestions. But as the CEO of the NGO network, and as somebody working with the not-for-profit development sector for the almost 3 decades, I have been thinking of some major challenges here that might be coming in. I'm not going to the specifics, but challenge number 1, it has to be owned by our government. And the other point is, NGO Affairs Bureau is not the only regulatory agency. NGO Affairs Bureau regulates only the NGOs that are getting foreign funding. But there are other ministries or agencies under which many NGOs work, like even Youth Development Ministry, Women Affairs Ministry, Social Welfare Ministry, a number of them. They are not under the umbrella of NGO Affairs Bureau. So there are this diversity. Shama Alam was talking about it. The diversity among the NGO sector, the NPO sector in Bangladesh. This will be a major challenge for us. How the government will be owning it. And for me, as somebody who worked with the government as a decision maker, as a minister for 3 different ministries, I will insist on having our government in the driving seat for implementation of this kind of a international standard. Government has to own it. Government has to be in the driving seat for implementation of this. So how do we deal with that? And this will be one of the challenges. The other challenge that I could see with all the stakeholders, huge capacity enhancement will be needed among all stakeholders. How do we deal with it? Whether our regulatory agencies, they have the capacity to implement this kind of a thing, or to monitor or oversee. So who will deal with the capacity enhancement issues? The NPOs will be needing capacity to deal with this kind of international standard. I'm not talking against the international standard, but the messages that I am getting through all the presentations and all the questions, there will be huge capacity enhancement. I'm not talking about capacity development. Our NPOs, regulatory agencies, every stakeholder has some kind of capacity, but we need capacity enhancement. And otherwise, if we don't deal with this capacity issue, equality among NPOs, already inequality exists. We have NGOs like BRAC, and we have a small community-based organization. Because I have been associated with this sector since our liberation, and how NGOs emerged and evolved in Bangladesh, we have to understand. Because it started with a voluntary, very private initiative, maybe in a household, somebody offering his or her assistance, and somebody is engaged or employed from the family. So this is the way NGOs started in Bangladesh, emerged and evolved as a vibrant sector in Bangladesh. We have to understand this diversity, how to deal with it. This will be a major challenge for us. The other one will be, well, COVID-19. It has already jeopardized the activities of NPOs. Funding is becoming more and more uncertain. And then we insist on a standard that is not owned by all stakeholders. We may not get the results. So how to deal with that issue also? That I'm raising some questions which we have been facing, particularly with regard to implementing the national integrity strategy, which has all those transparency and accountability aspects. In such a scenario, how do we promote international financial standards for reporting? How do we advocate for it? My suggestion would be to particularly the promoters, particularly the organizations NFA4 and all those agencies that are working on it, will be to keep the message simple, straight, and user-friendly. Otherwise, it will create another kind of inequality within the NPO sector in terms of capacity. So we have to deal with all those challenges that are coming forward. But I'm 100% agreeing with you. If we really want good governance, we need transparency and accountability in the NPO sector. Here, Institute of Chartered Accountants, Bangladesh, ICAB, can really play a big role facilitating this process, helping NGOs, NPOs to develop this kind of capacity. But that also means resource allocation has to be there. So this is one important area to look at. So who is going to provide that resource? ICAB will provide the technical assistance, no doubt. We'll be happy to, but we also need capacity, resource capacity, etc. So there are many challenges ahead. But again, finally, I would like to say thank you. Thanks to everybody, particularly the president of ICAB, his council members, all the members who have joined this particular session. And I feel so proud of this institute because I'm like a family member of because my husband was past president of ICAB. So I take pride in this institute, the way it has developed and the way it has been trying to establish accountability and transparency within all sectors, whether be it profit or non-profit or government or public sector. So thank you so much again for providing your time, and thanks to the organizers and the agency, Samantha and Ajhar, for presenting wonderful insights. And we look forward to get those consultation papers, and definitely ICAB will be helping us to go ahead. Thank you. Bangladesh has faced and managed so many challenges. We will also manage many other challenges. Thank you so much.
Yes, I must thank you for your nice concluding remarks. It is very encouraging for us, and we are proud to have you with us today. And I must thank you, the paper presenters, and we definitely want to have you again because of some technical difficulties. Many of our members could not attend today, but we feel that we will continue this process because we'll be having more sessions afterwards. And definitely, institute has an important role to play in the implementation process of standards. And now FRC is in the driving seat. FRC is part of the government to implement these standards in Bangladesh. So we will collaborate with them, and definitely our members and many of our learned members are here. They're actively participating in the day-to-day activities of NGOs. I think this country, the more people are engaged in the NGO sectors, they're working well, and I think it is a wonderful seminar. Our members missed some portion of it because they couldn't participate, but thank you again for giving time, and we will hope to see you again. And uh, definitely, Appa, thank you for joining us. We really enjoyed your presentation, and I must thank you, our chief guest, for his kind attendance and speaking to our members. And definitely, we shall meet again. So, with that note, I thank you all of our members attended this seminar, and looking forward to have in other seminars again. So thank you, Appa. Thank you again.
Thank you. It's nice to be among professionals. Thank you.
Yeah, you are within the professionals all time. As you rightly said, you are part of our family members. Thank you, everyone.